Don't believe, just know. Cymatic TV, turning vibration into reality. Hi everybody, this is a video about what's been going on this last week. So we're talking between the sort of 14th of December 2020 right through to the 21st of December 2020. Just sort of say, that's a photograph of my son who's just jumped off a 5-meter high rock, and it is the moment when he is just breaking the surface of the water, and it almost looks as if he's walking on water. I might start calling him Jesus. I don't know. What do you think? Anyway, let's just go through a few things. We're going to delve deep into these sort of rhythms that have been coming our way over this during week. And what does it mean in the bigger picture? What does it mean for us? So anybody who's been watching the energy updates on our channel, Cymatic TV, you will see we talk a lot about sort of solar cycles and the effects of the solar winds, or the prana, if you're talking about Ayurveda sort of medicine and everything like that. And you know, you get the different types of wind that come our direction. Go and have a look at the playlist and you'll find out what it's all about. So we're just going to look at this, what's been coming on. So over the last month, we've had the new month and a half, 2 months, we've had the new solar cycle 25 that started, into early mid-November, when the sun really started kicking off. Now these solar cycles, as you can see here, they usually last between 10 and 11 years, on an average around about 10.56 years. So and we talk about that as a solar cycle. These solar cycles, as you can well see, happening in the past, and this goes back to solar cycle 21, which is going to be approximately around about 1990, I guess. 1990. So then they've been gradually dropping off. Now they go up and they go down, and in the earlier parts of the century, from 1970s right up to I guess it's 2000, really, to be honest, you had a build-up of energies, and then since then it's gradually been dropping off. So these cycles, as you like, the upper section there, you can see where the sunspots are on the sun according to the north and south, and they make this thing that we call the butterfly effect. So they start out at the beginning of the season very high up altitude, whether them being in the north or the south, and then they gradually, as the season comes to fruition, they tend to sort of go down and start dropping away. And these cycles we can track right back. We have the Chinese that were looking at the sunspots, and also the Mayan tribe in South America, and you can go back as far as the Olmec. They were looking at the solar cycles and, you know, drawing conclusions according to these cycles. Now this cycle goes back, if you can see this, this is a very well-known map or graph. You can see these solar cycles go up and down, they oscillate, so they tend to have sort of 2 or 3 cycles where they're really big, and then it sort of drops off. And you can see there right on the left-hand side what is called the Maunder minimum, and that happened some time ago, and that's basically the sun just shut down. And anyone who's been watching my channel, Cymatic TV rather, you will see that the solar cycle has really been dropping off, as you saw in that graph earlier on. So let's just put in a little bit of the bigger picture of what's going on now. So you have the solar cycle is like the metronome. That's what I'd like it to. And we have, as you can see up on the top right-hand section, a map of my lines. These are the main energetic lines that go across the earth, and where they cross, they create chakras. So you get a fusions of the energies of the southern and northern or vertical and horizontal, it depends, and that will create a type of chakra. The only chakras that are on the same lines are the crown and the root chakra, and they cross over in the same place when you actually invert the energies. And we will be going into pole shift and everything like that. But let's just go back and see the rhythm of things, yeah? So there is actually 6 lines on that map. And it takes approximately a cycle to do a line, basically. So this is how the mathematics work. You can see on the left-hand side. So you get 10.56, the solar cycle, times by 6, and then we get up to 63.36 years, which is fantastic. A really good thing. What was happening 63 years ago? 57. So you get those sort of baby boomers coming through now, and working into the age of the 60s and free love and everything like that. So maybe that's coming back round. Let's see. Yeah. Once we do that, we can take that cycle, the 63.36, and times it by 6 again, and we get up to 386 years. 380.16 years, sorry. If you take 220 and you take off 380.16 years, we get down to 1640. If you look down in the figure, the graph below, on the bottom right, you'll see that that's pretty much when the Maundam minimum started. And we've been talking about this on Cymatic TV for some time, about the fading sun, the cycles, the sunspots that are going down and everything like that. And we're due for another cycle. So that cycle is coming back at the moment. And it will come back through this one cycle that we're going through, cycle 25, and then I think it will drop off. So this is what's happening over this week, has been connected to that, and we'll see that a little bit later on. Let's just follow it through. We've got 380.16 years times 5.64. Now what happens is, and you will see that in any of the rhythms, if you stop the video, you can have a look at the images on the left and right down below, and you will see that every 3 cycles it tends to die down a little bit in the way of cycles. The cycles tend to get a little bit shorter, and this is why there's a 5.64. And we get up to 2,144 years, 1024, which is equivalent of an age. So we're talking about an age of Aquarius, an age of Pisces, the ages. So if we times that again by 6, because then the rhythm will take back up again. So we got 2,144.1024 times 6, we get up to 12,864. Now this ties into the rhythms that we can see below. So the Gothenburg, which is the excursion event, happened 12,000 years ago. Now this is all to do with the pole shift. This is to do the movement of the poles, and we will look at that later on. But just this is how it's tying into it. If you actually double that figure, that 12,864 years, 1,000 years, then there, if you double it itself, so you get the yin-yang effect. And this is where you've got to know, you've got to understand that there's more than one rhythm playing here, and there's overlapping rhythms. And this goes up to 5,500 years, roughly, 25,728 years. And that's roughly the time that the cycle of all the ages actually happens. So you've got the opposites going on. Once we go into this, we've also got the Lake Mungo event, which happened 24,000 years ago, between 24 and 28,000 years ago. And then we get the Mono Lake one, which goes between 33 and 37,000 years ago. And this is, you can see on the right-hand side of that image the effects that it had upon the Earth. And, every 12,000, between 12 and 14,000 years, we get a recycling of all of this sort of stuff. This image in the bottom left, I've got to say, comes from Suspicious Observers, which you can find on the internet, but you can certainly find on YouTube, find their channel, I do suggest you subscribe. As much as if you're watching this for the first time, please subscribe to our channel. Yeah. So you can see these events coming up. It's a rhythmical fashion. Yeah, and these rhythms are all coming together at the same time, and this is what we're seeing a little bit about that this week. Yeah, so we have the Maunder minimum, and that brings us into the longer cycle. There is one other thing I'd like to say, is this is where the planets come into it, and this is where this week it is interesting, simply because we've got the conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn. Yeah, but as the sunspot cycle gets heats up and gets to its height, it also coincides with what we call the planet's tidal index. Now, this is a conjunction between Venus, Jupiter, and a third one. I will put it in the comments below. For the life of me, I've forgotten which one it is. But anyway, it's when these planets line up, it actually increases the solar activity, and they tend to stick to that rhythm. It is a natural sort of rhythm and process that we're all going through at the moment. Yeah. So as we can see here on the left-hand side, sorry. As we can see on the left-hand side here, this is also from Suspicious Observers. The magnetic field of the Earth has been dropping through the floor. Yeah, it has been gradually dropping through the floor, as you can see there. Over the past, say, like 100 years, 150 years, that's when it started going down. Over the last 150 years. But look at the rate of the descent. Yeah, and we have actually stopped in 2015 giving details about that drop in the magnetic field. They no longer publish it, simply because I think everybody's clear on it. It is really starting to happen. It's really starting to move through a lot. This is all to do with the pole shift cycle. So this pole shift cycle, as you can see up the top left, over the last 5 million years, the Earth's magnetic field has reversed itself at least 20 times. Over the last 20 million years, the reversal happens about every 200 to 300,000 years. Although it's very difficult to predict, which is so true. Yeah, and geologists do their best to sort of find out uncover the information. The last magnetic pole shift, was around about 780,000 years ago. So we're well overdue when we had a full total reversal. We are incredibly overdue, and then this happens to do with tying in and all the rhythms that's happening. If you can see, it also says up here it says that there's a reduction of the magnetic field before the Earth magnetic poles switch. The magnetic field slowly gets weaker, and this is what is happening here. Thanks to Suspicious Observers for this animation. This is what has been happening over here, and we can see this from the event down below, where the North Pole, since, if we take it back, if we go back to 1880, and that's pretty much when it was the furthest away, 1880, 89, it started moving radically, but to an extent now that we're up to 70 miles per year, when it was taking sometimes 100, 200, 300 years to move that amount. And it has been accelerating all the time. There was a little bit of a pause in 2017, but since then it has kicked up again. So we are moving into that. A pole shift takes a long time, but there are triggering events. And this is what we're going into. And this is what's been happening. So that's the longer view. So we know we are here for some form of change. It depends on what sort of change we're going to go through. And this is a real pivotal point at the moment, I think, personally, between the time of 14 and the 21st of December 2020. It's like we've got more than one rhythm coming together. Yeah, I've been doing some of the videos on my energy updates, which you can see in the playlist. So go into that and have a look. You'll be able to see what we're talking about. But one of the first things that happened, that was on the 14th of this year, was a total eclipse. Now, on the top right, you can see I've overlaid the path of the eclipse onto my map, and it's pretty much cupping the root chakra. And then you can see down below right, it's actually cupping or supporting the crown chakra. Now this goes back to the idea that these two chakras are linked together. They are connected. These are the only two solar eclipses, total solar eclipses this year, and the last one happened on the 14th of December. The other one was back in June. It's nicely 6 months apart. Yeah, and one was in the northern hemisphere and one was in the southern hemisphere. At the time when the eclipse goes through, usually you get quite big sort of earthquakes. So this inverting of poles, it's almost as if the energy is sort of saying, we've come to the end of a rhythm now and we're moving into something completely different. And this is exactly what's happening with that pole shift that we were talking about. It's almost as if within the planets itself and the solar system, it's actually sort of saying, okay, it's cooling time, basically. And that is affecting us individually and collectively. And we will go into that a little bit at the end. So, how does this affect us? Well, Jupiter, let's have another look at a Jupiter and Saturn conjunction, which is on the 21st of the 12th, 1920. Sorry, I've got my figures wrong there. The 21st of the 12th, 2020. Now, they were actually in conjunction, according to the Sun, 2 or 3 weeks ago, and we did have a big solar flare. What we're having in the way of the conjunction on the 21st is a visual effect from Earth itself. So it's actually trying the magnetic field of the Earth. Yeah. So what's happening is Jupiter is moving in front of Saturn. So it's actually taking away Saturn's wind. It's bringing on something else, taking away from Saturn the effects that it can have on the Sun, the effects that it can have on the Earth, etc. And it will be coming more into play. So what are these planets all about? Let's look at Saturn to start with. So Saturn, and I did say in my video the other week, I said that Saturn was ruled by Sagittarius and Capricorn was ruled by Jupiter, but I actually got that the wrong way around. I do apologise. So Saturn is ruled by Capricorn, and it's all to do with Titans and the Zeus and Cronus, about meeting his kids and everything like that. Greek mythology, you should get into it. It's absolutely amazing. You learn a lot about the universe and about yourself. Yeah, but it's associated with things like responsibilities, reminds us of our boundaries, of our commitments. Yeah, it gives us the limitations of time and matter. So it's giving us the limitation of time and matter of the polar shift, and that's what we're coming into, that shift. Yeah, and it's also a shift in you and me, and we can notice this all around us. It brings definition to our lives, and Saturn makes us aware of the need of self-control and boundaries on our own limits. Yeah, the sort of things that it's actually associated with as well is sort of father and authority figures. Yeah, discipline, rules and regulations imposed on us by our authority figures or parents. It's also about teaching. It's also about the way things were, and how we can actually help us to understand the world around us. Saturn's lessons help us to grow. It does help us to grow emotionally and mentally, which ties in a little bit with Jupiter, because they're quite similar sort of things. So don't forget, it's Jupiter that's actually taking over Saturn, and it's bringing that new energy towards the Earth. So it's actually reflecting a lot more in our directions. So Jupiter, as I say, was a ruler of Sagittarius. It's also Jupiter is the planet of plenty. Yeah, it is also about tolerance and expansion. Yeah, and it is a very social environment, social energy, a sort of very zippy social energy, and that ties in with that solar cycle 25 that's coming in. All of these individual cycles are actually starting to happen pretty quick as we go through life. Yeah, certainly over the next year. But this is the moment to position ourselves, because there's so many things happening. Yeah. So as Jupiter, it's also it gives us the sense of a broader purpose in life. Yeah, the possibilities. It has also got to do with law, with morality. Yeah, gratitude and hope and honor as well is in there. It can also give us negative things such as blind optimism and excessiveness and overindulgence, which we've seen a little bit in society. Yeah, but it has got that humorous sort of sense and that sort of goodwill. One other thing that's been happening in the planets is also Uranus in 2000, or Uranus in 2019 moved into Taurus, and that usually moves every 84 years. And that, if you trace that back as a rhythm going back, 84 years, so we're talking 1936. So we're talking roughly, the start of the Second World War, really, and it usually accompanied by struggles and stuff like that. So there is a bit of, yes, there should be a lot of optimism, but there's a lot of stuff to sort out, and the world has been reflecting this. The energies from the sun has been reflecting this, and society itself has been reflecting this. I go through it every week, twice a week on the energies update, so make sure you get into that and see that. The other thing that's happening on the same day is that solstice, the 21st, yeah? So it's the energies that are moving, coming back to life in the northern hemisphere and going to its complete extremes in the summer in the southern hemisphere. It's actually a very vibrant moment for the inductions of energies in the earth. This solstice is also a way of renewal of oneself. It's the rebirthing of the sun. And this comes back to that solar cycle 25. It is the rebirthing of us as well, and that sun cycle that's coming through, that 10.56 years. It's also the rebirthing of that pole shift that's happening at that point. So it is quite an amazing thing. That whole pole shift, if we go back 380 years, if I'm not mistaken, I think we're going to be pretty much into also at the same time the end of what we would call the Dark Ages and move into another thing that we call the Renaissance. So this whole pole shift and everything like that takes a long time, and it's actually been happening for a long time. Yeah, but now we're coming to a stage where we're coming to a crescendo to all of this sort of things. And how does it affect us? Well, we are affected directly by all of these vibrations. The vibrations, the magnetic fields of the sun, how it goes into the earth and affects the earth, which you can see up there on the top right hand side, and how that energy then comes through us, in through our bones and our body, and actually is processed moods and ideas and movements as well within us. It's that whole electrical movement, or that whole electrical system that is within the body of the humans. Yeah, but we've also heard a lot about, and this is where we come into the bigger picture, and this is where we can start positioning ourselves according to all of this. In what has been called the Big Reset, Boris Johnson has been talking about it a lot. But also, we had this whole big reset has been gradually coming in. You know, we're talking about Saturn giving way to Jupiter, the optimism and stuff like that. And before that was all about rules and regulations and self-confining and realizing that we can't, you know, do everything and just take the earth for granted. We saw this with the Extinction Rebellion that was happening 2 to 3 years ago. This is whole process of putting new laws into place, this whole green movement and stuff like that. I think the powers that were have been using this vibration and this rhythm here to actually, you know, put forward ideas, whether you agree with them or not. We're not talking about that. What we're talking about now is the rhythms and what's just been happening within the human race over the last 15, 20 years. So in the last 2 or 3 years. And this is all accumulating into one spot of where is a changing time, and this has to do with this week at the moment. If you want to know how it affects you on a daily basis, go back and see some of the energy updates. There's been a lot of foundation work that's been happening. The other thing that was that went on 2 or 3 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, was also this idea of Brexit. This all redefining of boundaries. It's all to do with this conjunction point between Saturn and Jupiter, but it's also to do with the new solar cycle. Excuse me. This whole solar cycle, you know, these accumulated cycles together. Brexit has to do with it. The establishment of new rules and regulations. We've seen from this last year in 2020, this whole virus that's sort of coming out and that is affecting the human race, and all the new rules and regulations that have been put into place. This is really Saturn with its last fling of influence upon the Earth before it gives way to Jupiter. And Jupiter is that sort of idea of bounty, idea of personal responsibility, but it's very, very optimistic. So, you know, we might have that whole Taurus thing, that Uranus and Taurus, where it might be a little bit conflictual at the beginning to sort out the new boundaries and stuff like that. But it should be a great future. I'm incredibly optimistic for the future, regardless of what we see around us and the rules and regulations that are being placed upon people, which should not be stand in time. Let's be honest, it should not stand in time. But there is another thing that's going on the human scale. The World Economic Forum announced the Great Reset itself, and it's talking about where we don't actually own anything anymore. You just use things during your life, which is a fantastic idea. Yeah? I do like the idea of that. The only thing is I would like to know how this is being put in place. I don't want it to be a situation where, okay, I'm running Google or Facebook or Amazon, stuff like that, therefore I can actually have more than the next person. If we're going to work on it where we're using the Earth's resources, we should use them together, therefore having a common goal and understanding our individual responsibilities, that it's not good to buy things to just throw them away, that we could actually live quite happily without a massive population reduction in this world where everything is connected and everything is recycled and everything is reused. And therefore everything is shared as well. I don't mind sitting on a bus with loads of other people. I love being with people, you know, but don't expect me to speak to everybody. I may speak to some people if I do the journey regularly and I gradually meet people. But if I'm just going to London and I just want to sit back, relax and enjoy the ride, you know, that's fine as well. But I don't have to do that in a car. We have the technology these days in order to live with other people, but not for other people and within other people's space. And this is the big change. This is the big reset. So the things that have been suggested by governments around the World Economic Forum, the World Health Organization, I would be very wary if the money and power is not taken out of the situation. Yeah, it should be. If it is, then we can get there very quickly. What's all this doing to the human energies? So what's been happening over the last sort of, I would say, 15 years, and I've noticed it a lot in my healing, which I do week in, week out, and I've done for over 15,000 people, I have noticed there is a change of central vibrations from the root, sacrum, plexus solis, and it's moved more into the throat, third eye, and crown chakra. The heart is being a little bit bypassed at the moment, that's for sure. It seems like the plexus solis and the heart are acting as pivotal points between the two. But we can see an inverting of the human energies as well. And we can see this within the gender fluid movement. You know, as I say, we're not here to talk about whether these things are right and wrong, whether the Great Reset is a good thing, whether masks are a good thing. That I'm not talking about that. What I'm doing is just observing what is happening in the world. And I can see that in that whole sort of gender fluid sort of movement that's really been strong over the last sort of 3 years, is that whole sort of thing where it's meant to be liberating for people. But because it seems to be tied into laws in this Saturn, people are creating more rules and regulations about how to define the gender fluidity of a person. So it's not actually being liberated, it's constraining people. I think we should get to a stage, just maybe say, this is my own personal point of view, that we should just accept how people actually are. It won't actually change anything in the way of chakras and auras, if you like. It will just change the directional flow, the inversion of the poles. So although it may change of, say, like the things that are really important to us are much more into the third eye and the crown chakra rather than in the root chakra. So we'll be less money focused from here on in, from Christmas, from Christmas 2020 onwards. It will be more focused on sort of making communities that can actually work and survive the future. Yeah. Sorry about that. You will. This is what we should be doing. So you should be positioning in that position now. We have a time where you can realise that yes, the pole shift is not going to happen tomorrow, but it's happening. It's already been happening for 500 years. In fact, it goes on permanently, and it will last for another 500 years. And that's going to create a lot of problems for the environment, but it's also going to create a lot of problems for us humans. If this event sort of thing is coming up, then what we should be doing is actually creating communities that can put up with the changes of the environment, changes of the space weather coming our way, the space vibrations, the vibrations from the sun, but also the vibrations within us as people. If we can now position, and we are literally going through that last moments of kind of going, have you got your foundations in place? Do you know what you want out of life? Not who do I want to be. You are going to be who you are going to be. It's rather how you want to contribute yourself to the rest of society. So if you, at the moment, if you set yourself squarely with your foundations, then we can move on in the future. You should know what you want, and it may be countering the actual mainstream ideology that's going on at the moment with rules and regulations and stuff like that. How can you do it as an individual? Well, I guess you could start looking after your neighbours, looking after yourselves, looking after the people around you. When you set your reality within yourself, you will automatically start putting that out around you. And building of little communities in the future is how we can actually set up something that is going to be good for your kids, my kids, our kids, our kids, for future generations. That's what we should be doing now, and we need to pass a act. What we've been having is a lot of illusionary sort of things, which has been distracting us. And this is from anything from cinema through to the well-being movement. There's a lot of illusion in that section as well, within my own sector of what I work in healing and etc. We now need to be moving on to sort of kind of doing rather than just saying. So I'm looking at communities or building communities in the Pyrenees. I think that's going to be quite interesting to see for the future. I've written about it in my book, The Event, and also The Waves of Reality, which is the next section of the next book coming up. But these rhythms are sort of all coming to a crescendo at the same time. How is it being affecting you? We will be talking about this on a bit of a live view on Facebook a little bit later on at 9:30 GMT time. So there is a link below. Click on that link below. That will take you to my page and you will see the live view then. So I will see you now, because you'll be transferring yourself after you've subscribed, click the bell, like this video, shared it and what have you. You will be then moving on to Facebook where you can ask questions. I can try and answer it. Maybe someone else within the community can answer it. The idea is that we've all got a piece of the puzzle, and we've all got a piece of the solution. Let's just be part of it. In the meantime, I will see you shortly. Ciao for now.